Hello, my name's Josh Galloway, and I did my term project on news headline sentiment analysis. The goal of the project was to analyze a collection of news headlines to identify reoccurring sentiment themes. The dataset was comprised of roughly 1.25 million headlines and is the synthesis of two datasets publicly available on Kaggle. The news sources from which the headlines were pulled were Reddit's World News Channel and ABC, which is an Australian news organization. The time span for the collective dataset was roughly from 2003 to 2019. Preprocessing the collection of headlines, which may also be called a corpus, was an intensive exercise. For each headline, the words had to be altered to aid in the tokenization and counting process. Casing, punctuation, and numbers were all removed. Then stop words such as the, is, at, and the like were removed. Following this, the remaining words were shortened to their root form. Two methods readily used to accomplish this conversion are stemming and lemmatization. Stemming results in a word not necessarily found in natural language, and so would not work with most available sentiment analyzers. For this reason, lemmatization was the method whereby words were reduced to their root form. This is done to keep from producing additional terms which would not add value to the overall sentiment analysis, such as a separate term for talk and talking. The corpus was then tokenized into unigrams and bigrams, which loses the meaning associated with word order, barring at most two-word phrases. This is called a bag of words model. Two models or matrices were produced: a term frequency matrix, which is just a raw count of words in each document, and a term frequency inverse document frequency matrix, which decreases the weighting of common words found in the corpus. The matrices were very large. Even with a vocabulary restrained to 2,000 terms, the matrix was comprised of over 2 billion elements. These sparse matrices were separated after preprocessing into a test-trained split of 25% to 75%, stratified by news source. Since the size of the processed dataset was so large, dimensional reduction was necessary in order to begin the analysis. PCA and TSNE were tried, but both failed due to the size of the matrices involved, as they wouldn't fit in memory. So, topic modeling was used as a form of dimensional reduction. Latent semantic analysis was performed via SVD on the term frequency matrix. This is less memory intensive than PCA because the covariance matrix need not be calculated. Examining the singular values, a NE appears around 50 topics, and that number was selected for the number of latent Dirichlet allocation and probabilistic latent semantic analysis topics to model. LDA is a graphical model in which word document count is the observed variable, and the topic word prior, document topic prior, and document to topic assignment priors are latent variables. In sklearn's implementation, the model is fit by maximizing the evidence lower bound, which is equivalent to minimizing the KL divergence. LDA was performed on the term frequency matrix. PLSA is similar to LSA, but the decomposition is performed by non-negative matrix factorization, with the loss function set to KL divergence on the TF-IDF matrix. Sentiment analysis was carried out with the Vader Sentiment Analysis Lexicon. This lexicon produces four metrics in the form of a -1 to 1 overall score, and three 0 to 1 metrics for gradations of negative, neutral, and positive sentiment. Examining the sentiment scored topics from each model shows that the sentiment distributions are similar, with the PLSA model being slightly more positive in general than the LDA model. Hierarchical clustering was the first means of clustering analysis on the topic models. The four available linkage metrics in sklearn's implementation were used to cluster both reduced datasets on the three-dimensional sentiment scoring. Of the clustering criteria, ward or intra-cluster variance linkage produced the best dendrogram in both cases. For the LDA dataset, reoccurring themes appeared throughout all four metrics. A small group of four outliers seen in green in the dendrogram were identifiable, and an overall cluster number of 4 seemed appropriate with all linkage metrics. With respect to the PLSA dataset, again, 4 clusters seemed to be the best choice from the useful dendrograms. The single link criterion did not produce serviceable results, as the data was clustered into long, thin groupings, likely due to the closest paired grouping behavior designed into the metric. K-means was tried next, and the knee method was used to find the optimal number of clusters. The graph of sum of squared error versus the number of clusters shows that the LDA dataset performs best overall, and that the optimal number of clusters is in the 3 to 4 range. In viewing the findings from the hierarchical clustering exercise, the model was trained more deeply with the same cluster number selection of 4. Next, a set of Gaussian mixture models were built. For all of the available covariance matrix options, the model was shallowly trained with varied numbers of clusters and scored on Bayesian information criteria. Of the effective models, spherical performed the best, and again, the LDA model scored better than the PLSA model. The knee on the LDA curve suggests again that 4 is the best number of clusters, and the model was trained more deeply with this knowledge. Finally, dbScan was tried. Again, utilizing the knee method, k nearest neighbors was used to find a rough value of epsilon, which is the radius around each point defining the neighborhood for this algorithm. From this starting point, a two-dimensional grid search and minimum points per cluster and epsilon scoring on both silhouette coefficient and CH score was run. With the optimized parameters, models were trained again and scored on silhouette coefficient and CH score, with noisy points identified by the algorithm removed. In this case, the PLSA-based model outperformed the LDA-based model and also differed in the number of clusters the algorithm identified. The LDA model produced 3 overall clusters, with 16% of the points labeled as noise. The PLSA model found 4 clusters and labeled 36% of the data points as noise, making the scoring slightly suspect. The k-means based model performed best on silhouette coefficient and CH score metrics. In fact, the LDA-based models perform better in all cases with the exception of dbScan. This is likely due to the additional sophistication in the LDA algorithm from the inclusion of extra latent variables versus the non-negative matrix factorization. Comparing the models in a confusion matrix shows that only a few labels were in disagreement. Inspecting these disagreements on a PCA-reduced two-dimensional graphing of the LDA dataset clarifies the region of disagreement for all algorithms is generally between the boundary of cluster 0 and 3. Inspecting the topics closest to cluster 0 and 3's centroids shows that the two topics are slightly similar, with words fear and warns and other vaguely worrisome words associated with each topic. The reserved test set was utilized to measure the performance of the model. Using only words from the model's 2,000-term vocabulary, the headlines in the test set were scored for sentiment, following which the k-means model was used to predict a label for each headline. Each randomly selected 50-point testing fold was scored on silhouette coefficient and CH score. The CH score distribution was very tail-heavy, showing high levels of clustering performance for a significant portion of the folds. The box plot for the CH score distribution shows many outliers to the higher performing side of the interquartile range. The silhouette coefficient distribution was shown to be roughly normal, with a mean of 0.66 and a 95% confidence interval from 0.55 to 0.76. In both cases, the scoring was improved on the test set over the training score. This is likely due to duplication of topics between headlines, creating tighter clusters with more distance between them, and this would improve either metric. Overall, the data seems to support the idea that news headlines may be segregated into a set of recurrent sentiment themes. Since only dbScan's LDA model was in disagreement in optimal number of clusters between algorithms, the data also supports that headlines should be segregated into 4 major sentiment categories. Further work from here may be to collect a more diverse data set and try a varied number of sentiment analyzers. Work could also include adding a temporal dimension and correlating the clustering with measured events. Thank you.